Goodbye, Brunswick Landing Marina. It is Saturday morning. Don't know what date.
Yeah, I forget what date. It's the Saturday before Thanksgiving.
That's true. And we are leaving Brunswick and heading to Fernandito Beach.
A little chilly. We had a cold front come through, so it's it's low 40s, high 30s right now. And when we went through the hatch this morning, I could see my breath. So
it's cold.
It's cold.
As we headed down the channel, past the shrimping boats, toward the open sea, we reminisced about the good times we had at Brunswick Landing Marina. The marina, the town, and the people we met and made friends with at the marina worked out well for us. But the days were getting shorter and much colder, so it was time to head further south. There was still 3 weeks left in the official hurricane season, but the cold fronts were already passing south and the water temperatures were getting colder.
Alright, it's Saturday, November 17th, just before Thanksgiving, and about 8 o'clock in the morning, just departed Brunswick, where we stayed for 5 weeks, an additional week than we thought, but yeah, conditions were just miserable. So heading off to Fernandito Beach, probably about a 45 mile jump. So yeah, right now it's saying we should be in there probably about 2 o'clock this afternoon. So we're going to anchor off of Cumberland Island, which we understand is a pretty cool place, and then on Monday get into Fernandito Beach itself, and we need to get our driver's licenses in Florida, and of course a couple of things for the boat at Western Marine. Yeah, after that we're looking at heading down the ICW for St. Augustine, where we'll spend Thanksgiving.
The inlet at Brunswick has shoaling water depths on each side of the channel. We departed on an outgoing tide, which helped propel us out the channel. Here you can see the breaking waves just outside the channel, where the water can be less than 4 feet deep, enough to cause us problems if we strayed outside this channel.
Still chilly out.
As we headed down the coast, the shrimp boats were out in force as they went about their business. It was early afternoon when we made our way into the Fernandito Beach Inlet. This is a great inlet with few concerns on its entrance. In fact, it is the east coast base for the Atlantic Fleet Ohio-class ballistic nuclear submarines. While we did not see any subs come in or out from patrol, we did hear them on our VHF, along with departing naval craft to escort them into the base upon their arrival. So it was a great day on the water. Made it into Cumberland Island, probably about 1:30 this afternoon. Anchor was down, and yeah, we've just been enjoying this. It's been a hoot. So yep, just hanging here for the night. We'll be here tomorrow. Hopefully get on the island and see what that has to offer. It's supposed to be pretty interesting with wild horses. Yeah, you can see the Spanish moss on the trees, which is pretty cool. So looking forward to it. The anchorage was great, and we enjoyed watching the sunset to end a great day. Later that night was a great display of the stars on a clear moonless night as we listened to the owls hooting in the trees. The next morning after breakfast, we dinghied into the park dock, tied up the dinghy, and entered the park to take the walking tour. The overgrowth, undergrowth, along with the oak trees dripping with Spanish moss, gave a surreal feel to our hike.
So welcome to Jurassic Park, or better known as Cumberland Island.
We also ran into an armadillo along the way, unnerving Darcy a bit. We arrived in a meadow where we found wild horses grazing. Apparently when the island was abandoned, the horses were set free to fend for themselves. We ran into a number of small herds as we hiked the island. The island has a unique history with legends from the Revolutionary and Civil Wars living here. The Dungeness Manor was built by Thomas Carnegie, brother of Andrew Carnegie, who by that time owned 90% of the island. The Carnegies moved out in 1925, and in 1959 the Dungeness Manor was destroyed by fire. The ruins today are preserved by the National Park Service. The hiking tour then led us to a path that took us to the beach on the Atlantic Ocean. We found out the reason for the stunted, gnarled branches of the oak trees was because of the salt in the air from the pounding surf on the beach. The salt water stunts the growth of the trees, causing them to distort and limits their growth.
And today is November 20th.
Yep.
Natalie's birthday. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Natalie. I'm just trying to keep from running underground here.
Yes, we are. We are in the Intercoastal right now, going from Fernandina Beach to St. Augustine. We'll probably pull up somewhere late afternoon for an overnight anchor and finish the trip tomorrow. There might be a eagle over there.
Wow.
I'll have to check that out. So yeah, that's the latest update, and it's kind of cloudy, gloomy, and a little chilly, but not too bad. Anyway, that's it for now. So actually, do you think it's...
We were again on the Intercoastal Waterway to St. Augustine, Florida, where we would spend Thanksgiving. The good news with this leg was there were very few bridges we needed to pass underneath, and most of them were drawbridges. The scenery went between undeveloped wetlands to high-end housing with manicured lawns, which gave us a nice variety as we headed south.
Nice.
At the end of the day, we arrived in a small anchorage just off the Intercoastal Waterway, where we pulled in and set our anchor. As we pulled in, we hit the bottom, but we were going quite slow and were able to back the engine down and easily got off. One of the boats that was in this anchorage was Chanceau, which is French for fortunate or lucky. We caught up with them in St. Augustine as they were a couple of slips down from ours. More about them later, but they became good friends and we continued our southbound travels after Thanksgiving. St. Augustine was a real treat as the history and historic buildings are incredible. The settlement began in 1565, over 200 years before the Declaration of Independence, and only 73 years after Columbus founded the New World. Originally a Spanish settlement, it also fell into British hands, back to the Spaniards, and then was ceded to the United States, where its colorful history continued. Yeah, look, we didn't even see these last night. Look at all the poinsettias.
I know.
We had a special surprise for us as Christian and Milena Svengard also made it to St. Augustine about the same time. We met them this past summer as we were both in the same Rhode Island marina and, as it turns out, also from the Minneapolis area. They were traveling with Christian's sister and brother-in-law, Karen and John from Denmark. It was great seeing them again. Evenings in St. Augustine were special as the Christmas decorations were up and the lighting transformed the public areas into something to behold. We spent a couple of nights just wandering the streets and enjoying the sights. With Thanksgiving over, our sights were again focused on heading south. We had a choice of heading out to St. Augustine Inlet or heading down the Intercoastal Waterway and having to deal with a plethora of fixed bridges that we needed to pass under. Thankfully, our friends on Chanceau suggested we followed them, as they have the same spar height as ours, and they have done this route before and have an excellent understanding of the individual bridges and their clearances. As I mentioned before, Chanceau translates to fortunate, and we felt fortunate to have them at this time, as it would relieve a lot of stress on our southbound passage. Our last night in St. Augustine was on a mooring just outside the center of town, which gave us one last memorable night to enjoy the Christmas decorations on shore. The next morning, we were off once again.